where the legends play. Willie 1550 and 98.7. Hello there, I'm Kenny Graves. And as promised, on the phone with me right now, a former Miss Corpus Christi Teen USA, a former Miss Texas United States, and she won Miss United States in 2012. She is also a model, a former professional wake surfer. She has competed in jiu-jitsu and MMA. She is a relationship coach, a sports anchor, a podcast host, and she is now a Nashville-based singer-songwriter. It's quite a resume. Miss Whitney Miller. How are you doing, Whitney?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. When I hear that in an intro, I kind of forget some of the things that I've done in my past a little bit, so it wears me out.
Well, it was a mouthful to say it all, I got to say, but very impressive. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. You seem like such a big personality, and so I really look forward to having you on. I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Well, Whitney, first things first. So explain this. When you eat, you like to eat your food in your favorite bites. Please explain that.
I have not been asked that on an interview before. Yes, I just enjoy creating the perfect bite, So I don't want to just devour my food. I want to make sure each bite has the perfect amount of each tasty item that I want on that bite.
Well, it takes a little work, but probably worth it, I guess, for the taste buds, right?
It really is. I mean, listen, one of my favorite things to do is eat food, to be honest. I love if I travel anywhere, I want to find the best restaurant. I want the best dish on the menu. I want to try everything. And so I just want to make sure I'm trying it how it should be tasted with every perfect little thing in one bite.
Well, I may take your lead and may attempt that myself. I like that.
Yeah, give it a try. Let me know how it goes.
All right. Well, going back to your high school days, you were a decorated athlete in soccer and track. So what were your career goals at that point as a teen?
I always wanted to be on TV, so like radio and television. Mm-hmm. I kind of saw myself as a sportscaster. I thought that would be a lot of fun. But I also had this other side of me that wanted to chase tornadoes. I have this weird obsession with tornadoes, and I figured I could combine my tornado obsession with a television career by just going and chasing them. And I haven't done that yet. So if anyone's listening and wants to take me to go chase a tornado, I am your girl. But at that time, I just really thought I was going to go to school for communications and end up doing television one day, which is what I actually did. I was able to check that off my list for a while.
Excellent. As far as chasing tornadoes, way back in the first part of my career, late 80s, early 90s, did some tornado chasing, and nothing will get the adrenaline going like coming up on a twister. Promise you.
Oh, my gosh. I have no doubt. I'm very jealous of that.
You'll get there. If anything I've learned about you is you're very determined. It's going to happen. So hopefully you get some good video.
Thank you. I will.
All right. You attended college at Texas State University. Go Bobcats. And
That's right.
You got your degree in communication studies. How was your time there?
Oh, I had a blast at Texas State. It was, so much fun. I'm born and raised in Texas, in Corpus Christi, and I knew that I wanted to stay in Texas. And when I wound up there, it was just, we had a blast. We're right on the river. Classes were fun. I look back with, just such a fun time in my life. I mean, I feel like all of us can look back on college, and we have some times that are like, oh, wow, that was a learning experience, but other times that, just bring a smile to our face. And that's how I see Texas State for sure.
Well, while you were at school, you also became a professional wake surfer. Is that something you still have a passion for today?
Oh, gosh, I absolutely do. I mean, I was on the lake almost every day in college. And growing up in Corpus Christi, we were always on the water and always surfing and just on the beach. And so being able to find a sport that I could do in Central Texas that kind of emulated my childhood a bit of surfing was awesome. And I still do it today. It's not as big up here in Nashville. I must say that's one of the things that's hard for me is they have a lake life here, but it's usually going to hang out and parking on the sandbar and drinking beers, which I can get down with, but I also want to go wake surfing. So I'm hoping to maybe bring some of that here to Nashville this summer.
That would be cool. Love the videos too. Of you're very good on that wakeboard.
Thank you.
You bet. Well, you entered the Miss Texas United States pageant and you won the overall title. But tell the story here. You almost didn't even know about that competition until you found out the last minute, correct?
That's right. It was a very last minute kind of spur of the moment thing for me. I was competing in wake surfing, and so as you can imagine, wake surfing and pageants don't really go together. But I had a friend of mine call me and say, "Hey, do you want to compete in Miss Texas?" And right out of the gates, I said no. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. But as cliche as it sounds, I had this little voice in my head that was like, "You better get out there and do it. Like, just go do it. You'll regret it if you don't." So I called her back maybe a day or so later and said, "Okay, I'm in." But also, mind you, the competition, the pageant, was that following weekend. So I had 5 days to prepare for the Miss Texas pageant, which is just insane. I'm filling out my bio sheet on the way to the competition, but I made a vow to myself, like, I'm going to go in there as Whitney and no one else. I'm not going to try to be something I'm not. I'm not going to try to put on what I call pageant Patty. I'm not trying to be pageant Patty. I'm just solely being Whitney. And if I win, amazing. And if I don't, that's cool too. At least I gave it a shot. And went out to Miss Texas and won the swimsuit portion and won Miss Texas, and then went on to Miss United States.
That was in 2012 you would become Miss United States. So how was your overall experience with the pageants?
It was great. You know, I feel like we hear a lot of stories of how it can be really competitive and the girls can be really catty. I feel like I was pretty lucky where most of the people I've met were really supportive. I'm still friends with some of the girls today even. And so my overall experience was a blast. For a year, I got to travel and do different events and charity events and photo shoots. And, you know, when I look back, it feels kind of like a different life at this point. But yeah, overall, I'm really happy that I just took the chance and went for it instead of just listening to myself, my little voice in my head that was like, nah, you don't need to do that. I can't even imagine if I didn't compete. That would be wild.
Well, for everything I've learned about you, the word that pops into my head is fearless, and I really respect that. I like this story. You once had a TV job, but it was a tough one. You were on for 4 hours straight on live television, no breaks, no script, no teleprompter, in the middle of the night for a jewelry channel. So, wow. Tell me about that gig.
Yeah. Oh, man, that was my first job out of college, like my first real job. And it's exactly that. I would go to bed at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, wake up at 10 p.m. I had the graveyard shift, of course, because I was just this new little girl right out of school. And I was just selling any sort of jewelry that you can think of. And they would just tell you right then what you were selling. So it wasn't like I had a whole bunch of time to prepare. And they'd be like, all right, here we go. And you would just have to come up with all kinds of crazy things to say to sell this jewelry, it was really hard and really nerve-wracking, but at the same time, a lot of fun because it was always something new to do. And it gave me a really good experience. I knew at the end of the day, if nothing else came out of that, I knew that having the experience of live television off the cuff, really having no idea what I'm doing, would only help me in the future.
I do that every single day myself, so I can appreciate that.
Exactly.
All right. Now it gets really interesting. You began training in kickboxing, and that would lead to jiu-jitsu, some boxing, and MMA. Talk about that journey. That's
right. Yep. I was Miss Texas at the time, and maybe Miss United States as well. It bled into that too. And I just started training, like you said, kickboxing, and took a liking to it, realized, you know, my athletic background really helped me out, and figured that I wanted to not only challenge myself, but challenge everybody else on what they thought maybe a pageant winner, Miss United States, would be. And so I made the announcement when I was handing my crown over that I was going to be going into MMA and fighting and being the first national beauty pageant winner to take a fight. And half of the crowd, I remember, cheered, and half of the crowd gasped thought it was an absolutely terrible idea, including my entire family, which I understand. But I went for it. I started training. Man, I got my butt beat constantly. But it was a really good experience and one of the most fun things I think that I've ever done, but it was also one of the most terrifying things that I've done. And I got into the ring and had my boxing fight against a very veteran fighter. I didn't want to get in there against someone who people would think that I just chose an easy opponent. I wanted someone that was going to be challenging for me. And if I got knocked out, my plan was just to raise my hand from the canvas, and I know that all my friends would cheer for me then. So that was just my plan going into it.
Well, once you started competing in jiu-jitsu and you told your family about it, like I said, they weren't really on board, especially your dad, because videos had chronicled this entire journey. And your dad was not a fan of people wanting to punch his daughter in the face, from the beginning, was he?
Oh, no. He definitely wasn't. His only child, getting in the ring with somebody who wanted to take her head off was definitely not a part of his plan and not how he saw my life going. And so there was some tug and pull in that for sure. But, growing up, my family always said, oh, Whitney's going to do what Whitney's going to do, because I'm just the type of person that I have to feel it and taste it and see for myself. And this was one of those things that I decided that I had to do. But I'll tell you, on that, when I was in my boxing fight, he was front row screaming and yelling, and there's pictures of him with a huge smile on his face. So he came around, but now he never wants me to do that again.
He made it through once. He doesn't want to go there again. I understand.
Exactly. He was like, can we check that off the list and never do it again, please?
Well, let's go back to your very first public competition, which was probably jiu-jitsu. How were your nerves at that moment?
Oh, my goodness. I was terrified. It's just, and you really have to learn how to control your breathing and control your heart rate, because if you get the adrenaline pumping too soon, you get really tired easily in your matches. And so that was something that I had to work on. And thankfully, I had been a competitor in athletics my entire life. So I did have, practice at being able to work through a lot of those fears and doubts and being able to get my heart rate down. But still, that was my first time fully physically fighting somebody else. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I won gold. So that felt good. I always like that.
Absolutely. Now, are you currently still doing jiu-jitsu and MMA training on the side?
I do a little bit. I haven't done jiu-jitsu. I keep flirting with getting back into it. I got to be honest, it hurts. My body hurts when I'm doing jiu-jitsu. They call it rolling. When you roll, it's just, you don't know if you're going to break your fingers or your toes, and your joints just kind of hurt. And it feels pretty good to not constantly be in pain, believe it or not. But I do box. I box now twice a week with a professional fighter out here in Nashville, just to keep those juices going.
All right. Well, can you share the story, please, about your wrist tattoo that says 7/6/16?
Yes, I can. So this date, 7/6/16, it's a date, and I was in a place where I was fed up with myself. I was upset with how I was going about life. I was just preventing myself from doing the things that I really wanted to be doing, one of them being singing, even though I wouldn't at that point say that out loud. But I had a podcast then, and I had all these other things that I wanted to do, but I was too afraid to do it. And so I said, you know what? This is not going to work for me anymore. So I went down to some random tattoo place in 6th Street in Austin and got this tattoo, 7/6/16. And it's a constant reminder to me that if I'm too afraid to do something, that's the one thing that I needed to do. It's basically saying fear is your guiding star. And so you just chase fear and you have no other option. You don't have an out. It's whatever that is at the end of it, you're going to go for it. And so, yeah, it's just a constant reminder for me.
All right, Whitney, tell me about making that decision to pursue music, because it's hard to picture, but you did have a big fear of singing in public, right?
I was absolutely paralyzed when it came to singing. I was told when I was 10 years old that I had a terrible voice and I couldn't sing. And at that point, I probably couldn't sing. But, I was a 10-year-old girl just having a good time, and it was something I loved to do. But once I heard that, I internalized it, and I would never sing in front of somebody again for, 15 years. It was just something I couldn't do. My body would go into fight or flight mode. I would either get angry and just leave, or I would shut down and start crying anytime it would come up. And I just couldn't handle it. And I finally realized, look, I don't want to be on my deathbed with this one thing still there. That to me terrifies me more than actually giving it a try. And I started taking vocal lessons just to flex that muscle of singing in front of somebody, just one person. And I then simultaneously made a trip to Nashville to visit a friend of mine, and it kind of just got all of those creative juices flowing and showed me a life that I could have. And it was the life really of my dreams that I wouldn't even say out loud to people, but it just kind of fell into place. And my vocal coach at the time said, hey, do you want to come in and sing for me? He's doing a little YouTube project. And to me, that's the most terrifying thing in the world. Like going into a multi-million-dollar studio with more than one person hearing me sing was extremely terrifying, but I knew I had to say yes. And my whole kind of mantra throughout this experience has been just say yes. Just say yes to it and then figure out how you're going to do it later, but just say yes. And so I went into the studio and I sang, and it's Orb Recording Studios in Austin, and the owner, Matt Nevesky, was there, and he said, look, I feel like there's something here, and if you want help doing this, if you want help to create music and write and record your own music, I'm here to help you. Just let me know. And again, I just had to say yes. And so I just said yes. And from that moment, it's been pedal to the metal. There has been no brake pedals whatsoever. I said yes to that. And I won't go back to being that scared Whitney that wouldn't give herself the life that she really wanted.
Well, there's your song title right there, No Breaks.
No breaks, exactly.
The mantra of your life. Well, your single, the debut, Diamond Country, caught fire. Where were you at the first time you heard that on the radio?
Oh, man. I got a phone call that they were going to play it here in Nashville. And so I was just watching the moments, the seconds tick on that clock until I could go sit in my car and listen to it. And it's just such a cool experience because, not only just hearing your music on the radio, that's awesome. But for me, Diamond Country was an accumulation of all of my fears that I chased into one song. And it's not even necessarily about that, but it was just, a representation of so much of who I am and how much I held myself back. And I finally birthed that to the world pretty much. And it was a very, very cool experience. I think the one thing that got me was just seeing my name on Spotify, and seeing my album cover on Spotify. Like, that was just wild.
Well, how was your experience in the studio? I know you're somebody who's looking forward to tackle a new project down the road, so maybe producing down the road might be something. What did you learn from that first go-around?
That I know nothing. That I know absolutely nothing. If I didn't think that before, I certainly know that now. I really went into this completely blind. I had no idea what goes into making a song, no idea what goes into writing a song. Like, I was basically an infant walking into the studio with no prior knowledge. And so now I definitely have more tools in my bag, but I'm still learning so much. And, creating a song is one thing, and getting in the studio and producing it and having the instrumentals is one thing. But then they don't call it the music business for no reason. It's also running a business, and you have to become a CEO of your own business. And so I've been trying to do my best to mold those two worlds and just trying to be a sponge and learn as much as I possibly can. And not being afraid to ask for help, I think, is a really big thing. Making sure that if I don't know something, I know that there's someone who can do it better than me, and just not being afraid to reach out and say, hey, I don't know this. Can you help me with that? That's been really helpful for me.
Wise words from a wise lady. Well, the brand new single is 15 Minutes of Fame. It releases today. What can you tell us about that track?
I am so excited for 15 Minutes of Fame. It's one of my favorite songs right now, and it's different from Diamond Country, my debut single that released, but it's definitely more vulnerable. It's a peek behind the curtain into my heart and mind through one of my biggest heartbreaks, and it really just allows me to stand up for myself a little bit in a fun, sassy, truth teller kind of way, which is my way of doing it. Fantastic.
And the album. Give us an overview of the album.
So I'll be releasing new music every month this year. And when I tell people that, they look at me like I'm insane. But of course, like we talked about, I have no brake pedal. So we'll see how I feel at the end of this year. But yeah, it's going to be some fun songs like Diamond Country, which is very upbeat, a lot of fiddle and electric guitar. But then there's also going to be more vulnerable songs like I talked about with 15 Minutes of Fame. That's still upbeat and fun, but it's going to show you a different side of me. And it's going to show, basically all the things that I was too afraid to say out loud. I'm now putting them into music, and that's how I get to say them. And these are probably things that I wouldn't even be able to sit down and have a conversation about if I didn't put them into a song first. So it's kind of me liberating myself. I've always tried to be the strong one and don't feel too much. And now I'm finally giving myself the opportunity to do that. And I think that's going to come through a lot of these lyrics. And I hope people can relate to it, because at the end of the day, yes, this is, for me, and I love doing it. But if I can help somebody through one of my songs, then it's already a win for me.
Nicely said. Well, you've played some iconic venues up in Nashville already. Is there a favorite venue you've played?
Well, I love playing the Listening Room. I've played there twice, which is such an iconic place here. I did Whiskey Jam, which I could not believe I did only, 8 months of living in Nashville. That is amazing and so much fun, and I'm going to play that again. And I'm looking forward, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm putting it out there that I can play the Bluebird this year. If I can play the Bluebird, I will probably pass out from excitement. But that's next on my list.
Well, that was my next question. Is there a venue on your bucket list aside now from the Bluebird, the Ryman, or the Opry?
Oh, man. Here in Nashville or anywhere?
Anywhere.
I want to come to Texas. I want to come to Texas and play at a place there, either, somewhere in Corpus, my hometown would be great. I know Brewster Street's a big one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Concrete Street. And then in Austin, I'd love to play like Emos or Antones, something like that.
Like to see it Green Hall as well.
Ooh, that's a great one. Okay, we got to add that one to the list too.
Yeah, oldest dance hall in Texas. Love to get you there. But, man, what else is coming up in 2023? You going to do Dancing with the Stars? You going to turn professional wrestler? What else is going to be down the road for you?
Wait, now you're giving me ideas. Let me write these down. I actually have always wanted to be on Dancing with the Stars, which is funny enough that you say that. So maybe one day I'll be able to do that. I think that would be so much fun. But, right now for me is just focusing on creating and writing and putting out as much new music as I can and making sure I'm having fun doing it. That's where my focus is this year.
Okay. Now, for any young folks listening who have a passion for something, whatever it is, give some advice that you would give to somebody young.
I think number one is don't get caught up in feeling like you have to have all the confidence in the world to do something, because we can look at what our biggest dream is. For me, I want to be the biggest, country star there ever was and tour. But that takes a lot of confidence, and that can seem like so out of your reach. I think it's just having the faith and the trust to just take the next best step. So whatever that is, if it's you want to be on television, so maybe it's researching your favorite, news anchors. If you want to start your radio show, research how you do that and what the next thing is. Reach out to people for help and just start taking those baby steps. And I know that sounds cliche. It's like, of course, we just take baby steps to get where we want to go. But some of these cliche statements actually hold so much truth if we just listen to them. And so I would say just take the next best step that you can possibly think of. Don't look at the end goal. Just keep taking those baby steps, and before you know it, you're going to be getting closer and closer and closer to the one thing that you've always wanted.
Nicely said. Couple of quick things before I let you go. Kiteboarding. Now, I know you got to try that. How'd you like it?
Oh, it's so challenging. It's very challenging and intimidating because that kite is so big. I feel like it could just blow me like across the entire country before I even know it, or just slam me into a hotel building. So I enjoyed it, but it was very hard. And my brother actually is going on a kiteboarding trip coming up in March, and I'm invited. So I'm going to see if that's going to work out for me or not.
Well, I'll be watching on your social media to keep up with that adventure, but tell folks how to keep up with you as well.
Yeah, you guys can keep up with me on all the social platforms. TikTok, I've been doing a lot more videos on there. Instagram is Wit in Love. It's WHIT, the letter N, LOVE. And then you can check out my website and some other music that I have on there. It's WhitneyMillerMusic.com.
Fantastic. Whitney, I wish you the biggest success. I want your 2023 to just explode for you. I want the breaks to all fall your way. Thank you for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. It was a great chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a blast. I really appreciate it.
For the awesome Whitney Miller, I'm Kenny Graves on Willie 1550 and 98.7.